a close-up at the Hollywood Reporter. I'm joined today by Molly Shannon, Tracee Ellis Ross, Frankie Shaw, Debra Messing, Rachel Brosnahan, Alison Brie, Drew Barrymore, and I'm your host, Lacey Rose. Let's get right into it. What is the most amusing feedback you've received trying out for a part?
I went up for Cape Fear, but I was like a washed-up Hollywood actress, so I went on a Sunday morning with the casting director's assistant in a basement, and it was the scene where he sticks his finger in her mouth, and I was like, so should I just stick my own finger in my mouth? And the assistant was like, whatever. And I was like, that, I don't know why, but the whatever was sort of the best feedback I got in the moment, which was, you're never getting this, I don't care, and like, let's just do this. And I was like, okay.
My first photo shoot, my first sitcom audition out of NYU, I went in and I did my thing, first time on camera, and I was like, I just killed it. And my agent calls me and says, okay, you didn't get it. It's like, uh-huh. She's like, they said you look like Kabuki.
Kabuki?
What? What are you doing with your makeup?
Oh my God.
And I was like, I'm doing theater makeup. And they were like, oh, no. The camera's right there. I was like, oh, I do it for, like, and they're like, she looked like she was 39, and I was 23. And they were like, she's got to go take a class.
Ironically, at 39, you look like 23. Oh. Joke's on them.
Thank you. I love them. You'll always be my sister.
Always.
I had a casting director need to work on my girls, as they were referred to, because they were too low, which is where God put them, so I think they're in a really good spot. But she called down the hall for one of her assistants to bring another bra, and she was like, what size are you?
During an audition?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, no.
Yes, ma'am. What it was absurd. She was like, what size are you? And I was like, 34B. She was like, cool. Is that even about 34B? They come down and it was a 32 something or other. I was like, that's not gonna fit. She was like, it's fine, they'll spill out, it'll be great.
One time I was in audition for House of Lies.
Terrible.
And the casting director was saying that I needed to show more skin, so she took the shirt off her back and gave me her tank top so I could, Felicia Fasano, and she, and so then I was wearing her tank top, but I still didn't get the part. It didn't work.
Was she wearing a bra while you were auditioning?
She was wearing, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually
no, just kidding.
Sweet.
Did you trade my shirt? Yeah.
I've actually done that too. When I was really young and I was auditioning a lot for, you know, like the CW and ABC Family, and I grew up playing sports. I didn't know how to do my own hair and makeup really, and I was like, I'm natural. People like that, you know. And my real hair, my natural hair, is like really, really curly, and I had a ton of it, and I just didn't know how to do makeup, and I had the same thing. They said, I think you need to wear like a more form-fitting top. The casting director traded shirts with me for a more form-fitting top, and sent me out of the room with her assistant to have her do my makeup in the bathroom. But that wasn't the only time that happened in that office. It was like every time I went in there, she was like, you know,
my question is, and you were like a child.
I mean,
and she was an adult woman, but her top was tight on your child body.
Yes.
Wow. I feel like she was wearing shirts that were too...
18, I'm not sure.
Well, this is LA.
Too small. Just because she knew that you were coming in, she was like, give me that small.
Yes, exactly.
I have a more intriguing question. What sports did you play?
So I wrestled in high school.
You did?
What? I knew this was going to be interesting.
Yes. But like traditional wrestling, where you wear a little hat.
Yeah, and if you have hair, a little cap under your hat. It wasn't the best look I've ever had.
Do you have one?
I remember once going on audition when I was first starting out, and I bumped into a girl. She was like, oh my God, have you gained like 100 pounds? Right before I went in. No. Shut up. And I just remember it really hurt my feelings. And now when I think about that, I won't say who the girl's name is, but I'll never forget. I was like, how mean.
Yeah.
But at the time, I didn't have strong enough boundaries to be like, what a biatch.
Well, what does one say to that anyhow?
No, it was very nasty, and it was kind of trying to notch patch me down.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I always have like the after moment of what I would have said.
Yes.
Because
Don't we all?
in the moment, I usually am like,
You're so shocked.
yeah. But then that happened recently. I gained a bunch of weight and I was in a restaurant and the woman goes, God, you have so many kids. And I was like, well, 2. And she goes, well, and obviously 1 on the way. And I looked at her and I go, excuse me? And she goes, well, you're pregnant, right? And I, for the first time ever, I said, no, I'm just fucking fat. And but that
Which, by the way, why are we continuing to have the fact that people continue to make comments on weight, size, and whether it's insane.
And I think there really are people out there who want to seriously fuck with your mind. And I am glad that I'm the kind of person that's sensitive enough to like take the bullet and then have the afterthought rather than be the crass person who can play in that moment. And I can do that maybe if I'm like, it's written for me.
Right.
And I can have that kind of moxie, but in real life, I'm just like, ow.
Well, but that's actually the new one that I've learned to do is, ouch.
Yeah.
How was that helpful?
You want to let them know that they said a hurtful thing without
That's good.
having to be a negative person in that moment.
I'm not combative. I'm much more of a doormat, and somewhere in between, I would like to say, like, a more rational therapist type of response. That was very hurtful. But if you're going to be that person, I'm so glad I take the high road. There's so much less traffic. But I never have that like one.
I like that.
Thank you.
Or I read a thing recently, like, where you can fog them, so you don't
What does that
bat
mean?
back. It means you agree with a percentage of the truth. Like, I saw somebody on the way to Park City, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, you packed so much luggage," and it made me feel like embarrassed. Yeah, like that was her introduction. And I was like, it's not a good introduction, but anyhow, I agreed with a percentage of the truth. I was like, you're right. Sometimes I like to pack a lot of luggage because, you know, sometimes you get some stuff to bring home. Yeah. So you agree with a percentage of the truth and it fogs through you.
Okay, I knew I loved Molly, but now I'm in love with Molly.
That happens. So we're fogging.
Really?
Isn't that good?
I'm quick.
Yeah.
Where's it go from here?
Okay, I'm going to go to Will and Grace.
You see me, I'm like,
Back to
I'm inviting to bat the next time. Thank you.
Okay.
I love that.
It's gonna be like it.
You have a show that's back now after the line of what's funny. Has it moved? Are there different things that make people laugh now than there was then? And do you feel that as a cast?
I think that because 20 years ago, when we started, the thing that made Will and Grace very specific was that it was provocative from the get-go. It addressed what was happening today in pop culture, in politics, and really pushed the boundaries. And I think because that was in the DNA of the show, coming back 11 and a half years later, everyone knew the voice of the show, everyone knew the characters, and so we didn't have to ask permission, we didn't have to apologize. They were like, oh, they're just doing what they always did.
Okay, he's a man, but he's aged into a lesbian.
Steven Tyler, John Voight, Newt Gingrich.
Yes. She's... Don't get me started.
Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yes. We want to love her, but she makes it impossible.
Caitlyn Jenner.
Of course. Rich, hostage.
Melania.
Beret.
Patty Hearst.
Woo! Obviously now with the state of the world, there is a lot more to comment on, and it feels like there's a lot more at stake than when we began. But I actually feel like we are literally just staying the course.
Do you guys feel a responsibility to be commenting on what's going on in the world, whether it's through your shows or as actresses?
I think as a human being, I do. And not necessarily commenting on it, but being an active participant and moving the needle in the direction that I think it needs to be going. Whether that's through my work, which sometimes is not within my hands because it's the script that's handed to me, but the beingness that I bring to that role, or sort of how I use my voice and the platform that my work has offered me.
The story of Rainbow Johnson has always started with, hi, I'm a doctor, but that's only half of my story. I am many things. I am a mom, a wife, a fashion icon,
that's when I get crazy. Fashion icon. Like
Listen, So maybe I can be all of those things, just not at the same time.
So you're saying you're going to
I think my show creator, Victor Fresco, who is just a genius and has given me the greatest gift in my life at this moment, I think he's commenting a lot with the show on the narcissism state of the world, the gluttony state of the world, the attitudinal, like, as far as women not wanting to take crap anymore, but how do you know, live in your id and fight without being selfish and it negatively affecting everyone around you, and just a woman who's dynamic but wrong, but living her best like life herself, giving it the full Oprah.
Holy are you chewing the post? Okay, here's the deal.
Mommy's going a little crazy down here, so I need to get out. And I know you're worried I'm gonna go out there and kill somebody, but think about all the people I haven't killed. Literally everyone in the world except 3 people.
Look, I'm sorry, but you put me in charge, and I'm not letting you out. And stop chewing the post. It holds up the whole house.
You either have to have a big, daring spine in a show, I think, and we're all in those kind of shows, which is amazing, or you've lost the current audience because we've just come too far. It's all been put out there, and we can't go back to like this Merry Neverland type of Leave It to Beaver. So they could make a show called Leave It to Beaver. It'd be very different. And that would work in the current climate. But
for sure.
We've just come too far, and so I like that whether it's metaphorical or character, these shows that we're all a part of are in the advanced current state of womanhood and the world. And then you can talk about it through a really cool channel rather than being on the soapbox, which in this day and age, it's so hard to be right. You're possibly wrong, then you feel bad, then you pull back. It's a very tricky, slippery slope to put yourself out there. So I like doing it through this character and this show that I feel safe.
Yeah, I have a much harder time exposing myself politically as myself than I do through the show, my show SMILF.
And you're writing it, so it's...
Yeah, so often we, you know, before we start writing the season, it'll be like, okay, everyone read all these books. Here's like the list of articles that we're gonna sort of incorporate and infuse in our show. And in that sense, like I sort of feel safe being, you know, sort of being behind the show in that way.
I'm going to meet him tonight. I'm gonna get him to confess.
Richard who?
My dad. Yeah, I'm going to meet him. I'm gonna get him to confess. I found him online.
Well, it's a bad idea.
I thought maybe you could just come with me or something.
You're not gonna get him to confess. He didn't do it when you were little. He's not doing it now.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just go by myself.
You know, this show definitely would never have been able to exist in any other time. Like our first season was essentially about sexual assault. Like if that was like that's like one of our core themes, and sexual trauma. And it's like this little feminist comedy on a, you know, premium cable network. And so I do feel so grateful that the tides are changing.
Absolutely. I feel so lucky to get to work on Glow with all of these feminist powerhouse women who are so intelligent and informed. I don't write on the show, so it's like out of my control. I do think it's a show that could have been made any time, but the meaning has changed even from when we started shooting it.
You think you got me, but then I come back around with the soon-to-be famous rough toilet paper! Ah! And then, you know, it's fight, fight, fight. I'm bad, you're good. I'm winning. Ah! Ah! You're winning. Ah! Oh, step! Oh, she still got me. Oh, you stupid American swine! Ah! For the hair and big finish, 1 cup of breakfast.
You know, when we started shooting it, Liz Flahive and Carly Mencha, our showrunners, thought, we're making this show in the time where we're gonna have our first female president. And that's where we're leading this story. And the election happened while we were shooting season 1, and obviously the tone of the world changed, and it gave the show a different meaning and a different importance. You know, I agree that I think in the past I've felt much more timid about expressing, and I do still feel a little bit timid, and you can be targeted and belittled in a way that's like, you're an actress. Why does your opinion matter? But it goes back to what you were saying, Tracee, about I'm a human being. I'm a citizen in this country. Yeah. So I'm allowed to have opinions, you know, and now we're living in a time where it is more and more vital to stay silent because you're afraid of losing part of an audience would be a real shame. Where I feel like in the past I'd be like, I am just an actress working on a comedy show, and like, I don't know, do I want to ostracize people who disagree? But there's such glaring issues.
It is a business decision. I have other companies other than in doing film, and you know, I sell out of Walmart, Amazon, Ulta, all these different companies, and I don't want to alienate people, and I don't. But it's coming from a place of I don't ever want to alienate people. I'm not one of those bitches who says nasty things about anyone. I don't have that kind of animosity. I'm all about inclusion. So it is a very slippery slope. But the one thing about all of our shows and doing this, and where I couldn't have more pride other than being with brilliant women, is the world is not funny. And we are doing comedy. And if there is one medicine I need with my life, it is comedy. Take me out of shit as you're telling me what it is you're trying to say. And comedy is the antidote to everything. And laughter is the key. And when it's heavy and it's maudlin and it's all stakes in, I want to run away. I can't help it. I need laughter.
I think there's something to that. Maisel, you have a show too where it has become sort of relevant in a way that going into it while you were filming it, Frankie, you too, you perhaps didn't know just how relevant these shows would be. Has that changed your approach or the conversations as you film season 2 or as you produce season 2?
Well, the best part about our show has been that it hasn't changed the conversation at all. It just has added to a conversation that has been swelling. And I think people are viewing the show through maybe a different lens, but it actually has been created exactly as it was intended to be.
I have wonderful parents. I've had a very comfortable life, and though I knew that love would be great, I had no idea it would be anything that could justify what I paid for this dress.
What I paid for that dress. We're very happy.
And because it's better than anything I could have imagined, I thought I should get up here today and tell all of you that I love this man. And yes, there is shrimp in the egg rolls.
Miriam!
This theme and idea of a woman discovering a voice that she didn't know she had resonates in a new way now. And that's, I think, been nothing but encouraging in the midst of a lot of turmoil and also a lot of hope. I feel like despite a lot of sadness and trauma and worldwide despair, I'm so encouraged by this moment we are living in, this exact moment. People are feeling a responsibility in a positive way to play an active role in their futures. And these are all things that we talk about through The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and through the titular character, Midge.
It is interesting working on a period piece, do you find? Because I feel like with our show set in the 80s, there's so much stuff that you want to point out about the injustices that were happening to women and why women need to speak their voices. And like the fact that it resonates so much now that we still need to be rule breakers and fight for certain rights is just interesting. I would say the same, that I don't think it's changed the dialogue of our show or how it's being made. I guess it just makes it more relevant.
Yeah, well, art at its best, and I feel like especially comedy, it holds up a mirror to the world we live in. It shows you who you are, who you want to be, who you maybe don't want to be anymore.
Who you can be.
Yes, and period pieces have been utilized that way because, I mean, for better
there's
and
a
for
bit
worse.
of distance, to go like, look what was happening then, and then you go,
wait, that's still happening exactly the same way, right? Oh, crap. You know, it's yeah, exactly.
Well, in that vein of humanity, I think also the best comedy in the world is not just, I love a good fart joke, but like, I do.
We all do it also. Go on.
There are also two different brands of comedy, and it is always the comedy with heart.
Yeah.
That's where I get the most excited by something funny. It's like, you know, even a film like Terms of Endearment, that's one of the most heavy emotional films in the world. It is just encompassed in this joy and love and humor and broad comedy. Where are her pals? I mean, you know, it's like that to me was such a lesson in storytelling that you could want to rewatch something that's hard to watch, but it's comedy and heart. To me, it's like in a man, I want humor and intelligence, or maybe something else. I don't know what I want in a man, but be funny, please, God.
Yes.
But I know in storytelling, I love heart and comedy. Those are the most dynamic and perfect combo.
I've been attracted to comedic men.
You're not?
No, that's so interesting. As you said that, I was like,
well, comedic men
I usually like quiet men.
Yeah,
I'm a little dark and
your sense of humor. You want a guy that you can
laugh with, yes.
Laugh with,
but
yes.
not like a funny
doing
guy.
the comedy act.
Yes.
Yeah, like comedians.
You can't have two of the same.
Yeah.
You notice a lot of louder one with a quieter one, like the turtle and the hailstone.
Yeah.
Molly's saying that all of us at this table need like a quiet guy. Yeah.
Wait, what?
You're saying that all of us at this table need like a quiet,
Slightly
guy.
more.
We're putting on the show here.
Yeah. I like funny guys, comedian men, or it's different.
That's a different thing.
That's a different thing.
Yeah.
I had like a connection there while you were talking. I was like, I should have kept that in my mouth. Sorry.
No, but I agree. And there is a huge chasm and difference because professional comedy, I think a lot of people remove themselves from their life, the world, society, the people around them to be able to comment on them objectively. So you can't get in there, and that's what I've seen.
A connected vulnerability that is based in that would be.
Yeah. I just want a guy who's like has a sense of humor.
I think that's fair. Speaking of playing off what you had said,
Is that too much to ask?
Yeah, exactly. Can it just be funny?
I think there's been a lot of sort of conversation around Roseanne specifically recently. Can you and should you be able to separate the art from the artist?
Do you mean
it depends on how bad they are. It depends on how harmful they are.
And what the harm is.
Right, and if people are actually hurt by their beliefs and by their actions.
But she made it clear from the beginning that this was her. She was a stand-up comic. Right. And she said, this is just me, I'm just being me. And so that's very different than saying, I'm creating a different character. And then when you have someone who is very outspoken on social media and says things that are incredibly racist.
Normalizing white supremacy essentially at its core, I feel like.
I think the problem is that, you know, she is more right-wing than her character. And I think that's where it becomes, at least for me, very hard to separate the two.
That there's a difference between being tolerant and tolerating intolerance. There's no need to tolerate intolerance. That's not what leads to a productive or unified society. And that, to me, feels like the thing at the core of, can we separate an artist from their art? Yes, we do all the time. We have forever and ever and ever. Should we? I think we need to reevaluate.
And we're in different times. I think that there's a different compass that's been set. And I think that there is a recalibration that needs to occur that I think is the reason that it feels so frightening right now.
What's the answer? How does it change?
I mean, your show, there was an episode that was shelved because it had to do with Take a Knee, right?
Is that true? No, it was Trump, right? It was
There's an episode that was shelved.
That was shelved.
But Blackish has explored plenty of other charged issues. As a cast, do you have conversations about what made this one different?
We have conversations about the subject matter of our episodes. Yes, we do. Very vocal, strong conversations about those things. The details of why the episode was pulled and everything that has surrounded that, I do not have the answers for. And to a certain extent, I have purposefully stayed out of those conversations because I've had no power to do something beyond that.
Right.
I have asked for the information and pushed for the information that I felt would be helpful to me and constructive in what I can do with it, because I find it frightening.
We did an episode in our show all about Nazis, and I'm like, whoa, okay. here we go again with the daringness of Santa Clarita Diet and their tone. And then as it was being shot, the Charlottesville March was going on simultaneously. We would go from our trailer to watching CNN and go in to shoot this scene. And then the scene is really about when one of the Nazis comes in a wheelchair. What is the real discrimination there? And are you discriminating because you're discriminating? And it just gets, and he's like, you're discriminating against me because I'm in a wheelchair. And she's like, no, that's not why I'm discriminating against you. It's because you're a Nazi. And then it just gets so crazy, and then she eats them.
Of course.
That's just a great way to solve a problem.
I was like, she better still eat that.
And it was a fun way for me to deal with what is happening right now that I don't believe is happening, and yet the make-believe gave me some way of dealing with it in a comedic and crazy way.
I love that. All right, we're living in, whether we call it the Me Too era or the Time's Up era. I'm curious for you guys how your world and your perspective has changed in a sort of concrete way. Whether there's one thing that you've done that you hadn't done before, or a conversation you've had that you wouldn't have otherwise had before this movement.
In all honesty, for me, the conversation, the narrative is exactly the same. This is a conversation and a narrative that I've been having both publicly, personally, privately, like all of those things. The biggest thing that has changed for me is the connection and the relationship with my fellow women. There is a camaraderie, a connection, a partnership, a shared experience. I mean, if the Golden Globes is one weird example that is very connected to our industry, but just that red carpet experience was like epically different. I mean, I remember seeing you, and you know, it wasn't about like, oh, you're not gonna share my dress because she might want to wear it or something. Like, there was a real, there was a purpose. We were connected to the collective power of us as women. We sort of switched the power relationship on that carpet. We were there as a collective force, and that to me was a Hollywood example, but I have experienced it behind the scenes in a way that I feel like has absolutely shifted.
There's also been a collective release of shame. You know, we're all like, oh, these were secrets that we all kind of had, that we talked. And now we're all like, oh yeah, we're all a part of it. And the stigma has sort of gone away.
Agreed.
So that's been really cool.
The conversation's just gotten bigger in that way that, like, the conversations used to happen in tiny rooms just with your best girlfriend of like, I don't think this was okay.
With a little shame involved.
Totally with shame involved. And maybe I read it wrong with a doubt. And now it's like, the floodgates are open, but in a good way, where everyone is, the shame has been removed, the doubt has been removed. Hearing other women's stories in such an open and massive way has sort of given everyone permission to go like, oh my God, I'm not alone, and like, it's not okay.
I feel like it's connected us to the larger story of what is happening for women globally. And, you know, I understand, but for Black and brown women, sexual harassment and sort of the inequality has been a part of the experience, and there has been work being done and being spoken for years, not just for Black and brown women, across the board. But I feel like the Hollywood thing sort of put it in the forefront, and there's nothing wrong with that if that is a light that is shined on the larger picture towards women's equality in general and stopping violence towards women.
Well, there's political, there's Hollywood. It's about pulling together all the big,
pieces,
culpable groups. I was always a producer, and I was never an ingenue. I was like a kid actress, had a downfall, came back, was a producer, so men never looked at me that way. And I've wondered if that empowerment of just thinking you're next to someone and assuming that and not ever behaving in any way like you're asking for their, not only permission, but their acknowledgement or their sort of like, do you think I'm okay? It's always been a, this is what we're doing and we're doing it side by side. And I think that dynamic really saved me out of a lot of situations that could have been completely different.
I think the question of, is there something you've done now that you would never have done in the past? You know, at the Golden Globes, when I spoke on live TV and talked about E and saying, why aren't you paying your women equally? I never would have ever even thought about doing that. And the reason why I did was exactly what you were talking about. It was the community of women and being connected. you know, on a daily basis with groups of women and saying, well, what can we do? How can we use our collective energy and our collective platforms to focus the conversation? And it was because of this conversation, it was like, oh, well, you know, if you can, this might be a great idea. It was Amy Schumer. She was like, Debra, if you can get there first, that would be awesome, you know, and it was her idea. And, you know, it was only because I knew that there were tons of women who were like, I am with you, you know, I have your back. You know, there's not going to be fallout because we are all here standing right beside you.
Do you
It's
guys
really
have
extraordinary.
any fear of the fallout?
No.
I don't either.
No.
I honestly don't. I can't go backwards.
Do you think it's because we're older?
Well,
maybe.
There was a writer in my room whose dad told her not to put Time's Up like on her Instagram because he's like, you don't know where this movement's going to be in 4 years.
That makes me so mad.
I mean, I've had male friends say to me, okay, you're going too far with this Time's Up shit. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? I'm going too far with this equality thing? Like, what are you talking about?
But again,
I'm going for equal, buddy.
And Debra, what my point was earlier is like I was never looking for approval, and that's how you approached that red carpet moment.
Yeah.
And if we, like, it's almost like, you know, the constant, like, if you go at it without demeaning people, maybe that's what your dad is questioning, is like, is it just going to be such a male takedown that as women we're going to wonder, like, oh God, but that's not the point of it.
Or just like people who think like that are going to die out.
Here's the thing.
That's
one way to think of it. Women aren't going anywhere. No one should, in any aspect of one's career or life or anything, the point is not for you to do something you're not comfortable doing.
Yes.
Right. I think you've got to go as slow as the slowest parts of yourself, and everybody has a different way, a different place, a different kind of voice, and a different hands to put into this. So whatever that looks like for you, and if it looks like you just literally living your life in the most authentic way that you can live it, that's exactly what it should be. This is not
That's
about
a great point, Tracee.
it's not about shaming someone for not being able to speak up or put a hashtag Times Up in their platform. It's really about for me, the Time's Up is so that anyone can have the space to be exactly who they want to be as they choose when they choose to be it. If you want to sleep with a man or a woman, if you want to, whatever that may be, that is the equality that I am fighting for, and that kind of social, racial, sexual justice is what I'm looking for in a world. And if my actor platform gives me a space and a way to reach a larger group. I remember when I was campaigning for the Obama campaign early in 2007, and I was terrified. And I also felt annoyed by myself. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I get that I'm a human being and a citizen and an actor that has a platform, but as an actor, like, why? Like, why should I be going and doing this? And my thought was, you know what? If the fact that someone watches Girlfriends, which at the time was the show, if the fact that someone watches Girlfriends and comes here to see me because I'm on Girlfriends and I get to turn the attention to something else, then that's all that matters for me. If my little thing can bring somebody towards something that they wouldn't normally come towards, and then I can share something that would open whatever that is up and shine light somewhere else on the more vulnerable, the most vulnerable, whatever that is, then it's okay for me.
Sure.
Okay, stop now.
I think that is sort of what also all of our shows are doing when we talk about the relevance of the work that we're doing and the topics that are covered in our shows. Early on in shooting Glow, Betty Gilpin, who's on the show with me, described our show as a Trojan horse, like to get these like real stories about women into like men's homes who expect to see girls in tiny clothes like wrestling each other. But actually we're smuggling in like truth and like into like dynamic female friendships and heart and relatability and like stuff like that.
Smuggling about
truth
all of you in your leotards jumping out of a horse.
Yes,
like into men's houses talking about female friendship.
That's awesome.
Yes,
I will watch your show that way.
Debra, the conversation you had on that carpet was about pay parity. That is something that has become a larger discussion in Hollywood and beyond. I'm curious if it's changed the conversations you've had in your own workplace, something you feel more comfortable asking for and having conversations about.
Yes. Yeah, I think it feels part about, again, the shame. The shame has gone away out of this idea of asking for what you're worth, asking to be paid equally, but also I'm noticing, particularly with equal pay, and obviously this industry is what's surrounding me right now, so this is where this exact conversation has lived for me, although it's rippling down through all sorts of other industries as well. But the biggest thing that I've noticed with the conversation surrounding pay equality is the men in my life who are amazing, who are progressive, who love women, who just don't realize. The Me Too movement, the same thing, who just didn't know. And all of these women having honest conversations with the men in our lives as well has emboldened them to take action towards pay equality too, which I've found really encouraging.
I feel like pay equality is such, it's a harder topic for people to discuss because people are so uncomfortable talking about money. And I can't speak to other industries, but I know that in ours, it's so taboo. You're never on set talking to another actor about how much they're getting paid on the project that you're doing. And that's why it's been able to run rampant for so long that the gap has been able to get wider and wider because you've had no idea.
Right, you don't
Agents
know.
Agents
That's right. That's right.
What the hell?
But so are you now having those conversations, is my point. Is there now more of a pressure? Yes.
Well, I don't know if there's more of a pressure. I have found that I have more freedom to have transparency. I actually have had real dollar conversations with girlfriends of mine in this industry and said, okay, here's what it is. And as a Black woman in this industry, and we know what the dollar does in all those different areas with, it is staggering, the difference.
So what do you do about it?
In what I'm fighting for versus what you might be fighting for. I am fighting to get where you start, things of that nature. However, I will say that one of the things, I had a conversation with an actress friend of mine who was in this position. And by the way, recently a lot of actresses are discovering, in hindsight, as #1 on the call sheet, that the #2 male was actually making more than them. We have discovered this. There's a lot publicly that's been out there, and then there's a lot that I know has been shared with me personally.
Gotta make a phone call.
But I will say that one of the things in having a conversation that I said to one of my friends is, you know what? Let's take a step back. Let's not worry about what he's making or was making. Let's take a second before we go there. What do you think you should be making?
Right.
Outside of the context of the equality of him or not, what would be comparable to what you are contributing to your show in the way, with the career that you bring, and with what you've been making, and what you think you should be making? And the truth is that it's the same thing I did. You come up with a number that's pretty accurate. Without even thinking about what a man is making.
Okay, what you just said is really important to me because, like, the TimesUp movement, all of these things that's happening, for me, it is tone. And I don't want to make men feel bad, or little boys who are growing up in this world and see women just eviscerating men. That is not right. I am not behind that, and that is not a tone I can get behind. Women having each other's back, that I'm behind. I've always been the biggest girl's girl. I've grown up with that male-female dynamic with pay in Hollywood, and not to be heavy, but my mom was in an unemployment line with me for most of my upbringing, and even past ET. And so I think about it kind of on that level of, like, when you talk about Hollywood, you're talking about so much money, and it's like I also get very humble and afraid of the conversation because I knew what it was like. I was in those unemployment lines. So when you're kind of demanding millions of dollars, I'm like, that's not the real conversation through the rest of the world. So I'm very sensitive about that. And so I have a timidness about equal pay. But what you said is, in Hollywood, I started out as, a kid when I'm 11 months old making a dog food commercial. You're not making the big bucks. And then, I had a career, and then it went away. And so I know what it's like to grow up not having it. I know what it's like to be, like, literally lights out, like you're done for a while, sit on ice in the blacklist corner, then revive my career and think about it as a producer, and then I would be in charge of people's salaries. So I was the one valuing others. And then as an actress myself, I just think the definition of success is employment, and I'm so sort of timid to ever go back to like having no career or being a kid, or you know, all the different kind of evolutions I've had with my relationship with the money I make. You know, and then I started like producing and having success with films and career and payment and all of that, and it was like a real high for like 20 years. And then I had kids and I stepped back, and then I realized I was a single mom all of a sudden, and like kind of had to go back to work, but didn't know how to do that with kids, and I was just like kind of in like a freak spiral. And then I got this show, and I was like, I'll take whatever you can give me. And then on season 2 and 3, I was like, maybe I'm of value to this show.
Yeah. Of course. But I also have to say, equal pay is not, it's not about the dollar number.
No.
It's about being compensated for the work that you're doing.
But that's
based
what you
not
said.
On, based not
what
on
is
your
my
skin color,
value
your
or
gender, or anything.
Yes.
So I understand, and don't get me wrong, I understand this is a very privileged conversation in Hollywood, but it's still the same conversation.
Yes. No, and I agree with equal pay for all working women.
It's not just women, just it's equal pay.
But
That's
what
my
you
whole thing.
said, but what you said was so on point about what is my value. So it doesn't become a competition or a takedown of others. It's I want to be valued for my value, and that to me has no gender lines.
Yeah.
Sure. No, but
and that is the perfect way to put it, Tracee.
I think that is what makes it so difficult, because all actors, I think men and women, have been made to feel at points in our career like, this is the amount I'm worth, and people are like, well, we're not going to give you that amount. There's 100 other people who would do it.
Do it for a quarter of the price.
Totally. Constantly being made to feel that way. It's hard to bolster yourself in this industry, which you so often have to do, and say, like, no, I am
systemically, as women, are trained to think we are overreacting or less than.
Which is why Pompeo's interview.
Right.
Yeah. The comps are helpful.
So badass.
What was that?
Yes, I mean, doing it, and so important.
Came out and laid it out, and you know, she's the highest paid person in drama, in dramatic television, and she laid it out, and she laid out how, you know, the numbers they were coming to her at, and how she thought that was bullshit, and how she was able to, you know, look at the numbers of how much money the studio had been raking in over the last 12 years, and was able to monetize it. And she was brilliant about it.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that resonated with me the most was that, you know, she said, I decided what my value was.
Yeah.
And the question is, are you going to value me or not? If you won't, I'll just leave. And it's about being prepared to walk away.
And that brings in, that begs the larger conversation beyond Hollywood.
Right.
Sure.
For most people in those vulnerable positions, whether it is a woman or a person of color or transgender or whatever that is, they don't have the whatever it is to be not the
resources.
Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. This looked like I was saying the wrong thing. It's not what I meant. I meant the resources. They don't have the resources, and that is where I believe that as women in Hollywood, as people in Hollywood, it is our job to protect those that are more vulnerable.
Yes.
To use our voices.
Their voices.
So use our voices in a way that does that.
It was not angry, it was inspiring.
Yes. Molly Ringwald wrote a piece in the New Yorker where she had revisited, you know, some of her early work in John Hughes movies, and there were scenes with another male character sort of touching her in a way that was perhaps, or approaching her in a way that in today's light we would say, oh, that's harassment, or you are degrading a woman.
Does she mean in real life or just in the film itself?
Was it part of the storytelling?
Yes, and at that time, that is what the storytelling was.
Right.
So the question is, have you gone back and thought about any of the things that you were asked to do, or the parts that you played?
Oh my
Are you kidding?
God, are you kidding?
I was going to say, where's the Drew Barrymore wine?
I had a good story about that. When I was first a struggling actress, and I was a waitress. I worked at Cravings Restaurant as a hostess, so I was living check to check, renting a rec, you know, I had very little money in my account, but I got a job on a John LaRoquette show, and I played a female protester, and they were all very nice. I was supposed to be a topless protester, but they were gonna, it's a sitcom, so they were gonna shoot us from behind. But then the director came and told me, and I got the part, it was like a speaking part. He said, I'm so sorry, but you do have to, you're gonna have to, it was a bunch of girls too, but I had to speak, I was the lead protester. But he said, you're all gonna have to take your tops off. And, you know, just because it's too weird from the back, it shows it's not good, so you're just gonna, and I was like, then I have to leave. And I was a broke actress.
Wow. And you did,
And I did, I said, I'm so sorry. And my body walked me out. And I was so scared, I go, I have to leave. And I did, started to walk out to my car, and they came and got me, and they said, wait a minute, hold on, we think maybe you could wear like pasties. And then I went back. And I have to say, John LaRoquette was not part of that. He was very much a gentleman. It was somebody else, I don't remember the director, but how about that, ladies?
Can I ask you what you did?
Can I ask you a question?
No money.
If you could think back, what was it? Because I'm curious, and I feel like people out there should hear.
Okay.
Can you like think back and remember and articulate what it was in you that said no?
And the bravery to walk away.
Yeah, like what was
like,
that?
Fuck this, you're full of shit. You want all these girls to have their tops off. And how dare you? I was furious, and I also felt embarrassed. I was like, I'm not gonna do that. This is worth no amount of money. I will go back and sweep floors at my restaurant. Fuck you. Wow. I'm out of here.
Also a demonstration of the power of saying no.
Yes, that's what I was just
Which is
gonna say.
back to this whole conversation we've been having.
Anger, and how you can use your anger sometimes to fuel you forward. There's nothing wrong with it when it's used appropriately. It made me really angry.
You know, the thing that was a revelation for me was it wasn't until we started having the conversations that I realized I had been sexually harassed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't even
The amount of things that you hide away in a place.
I had said, oh, that's the business.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, no, that's not the business. I was sexually harassed.
Yep.
And it was my very first movie out of graduate school, A Walk in the Clouds. It's a long story. But basically, I was tricked into signing a nudity waiver by the producers. And they basically said, oh, the director just has a big ego. We can't because it's PG-13. We cannot show any. So if you sign it, nothing's going to happen. And the day I showed up, they said, okay, this is your lingerie for the first part, and this is your nude scene. And I said, nude scene? And they're like, oh yeah. And the producers were there, and I went in, I was like, wait a minute, we talked on the phone, and when you said that it wasn't gonna happen, is it PG-13? And they're like, not an international.
Oh my God.
No.
I'm so sorry that happened. That's awful.
I think also those are the kind of professional revelations you have, and then the TimesUp movement makes you go back and think of just personal exchanges with industry people.
And it got worse. I mean, you know, when I was on set and he was lifting up the thing and looking at me and throwing it down, just to look at me, to like, it was a power thing. And I said to him, you know, before we shot, I'm like, you know, I like to be prepared. You know, can you tell me like where the angles are? And he literally said, you are an actress. How dare you ask me to tell you what my shot is going to be? You are an actress. It is your job to get naked. And that's it. I was in LA, my agent, my one agent was in New York, and I didn't have the strength that Molly had, you know, and you call your agent and they're like, you could say no, but you'll be fired. You know, and I was getting paid scale. I was getting paid nothing, but it was my big break, you know? And I was like,
and
just
the
close
amount
your
of
eyes
those
and get
stories,
through
and
it.
that's in,
I think that's another powerful message to women, too, that's just in the right tone of me, for me, is women are afraid to rock the boat.
Yeah.
And there's a reason women are afraid to rock the boat.
Yeah, exactly.
I also have to say, I think it's okay for men to be uncomfortable. I don't agree with tearing anybody down, but I think it's okay for people to be uncomfortable and for things to be brought to people's attention that they are not aware that they're doing or aware that they're doing that need to be pointed out. That we are in a different time where and I think part of the training and part of the systemic issue is that women are trained to worry so much about a man's feeling or another person's feelings that we put ours aside.
I was at a Goop conference, and someone said, how do we teach young boys our sons, our little ones in this time, that they're not villainized. And then I was saying, like, oh wow, since evolution, we've accepted like the man's superiorness, and everyone's been okay through the centuries of that. I think the shift will be positive. Crickets on tumbleweeds in the audience, and I was like, did I say something wrong? But I feel just like you. It's just, again, I think the fight is for the equality and the balance.
Right.
It's not about tearing that down.
And it's true. And on that note, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but sometimes it can feel, because of social media and the time we are with internet and everything, that if you don't say everything perfectly, you can get pounced on.
Yes,
And
there's no context.
Shamed publicly now, like you have to be some perfect robot politician.
Because I agree with you, and I posed it that way, and it was like,
and these
like,
conversations are often messy. You know, sometimes you're forming a thought and you're not going to say it perfectly. And we need to cut a little slack here. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And they're messy between other women too. I mean, one of the most interesting and important parts of this, I think, has been speaking with other women that I disagree with. Women of different ages, of different backgrounds, who we don't align, and it is uncomfortable, and it sometimes doesn't go so well. But that, to me, also feels like one of the most important parts of this, is that women begin to understand each other's experiences and how they differ, and why we feel the way we do, and how our own experiences have informed those things. And that's something that we can then share outward. To include other people.
I think it's a great point. I'm going to take a sharp left turn here quickly.
Could I just say one thing?
Yes, please.
All our shows are about life's mess.
And I wanted to get specifically to that.
Neither one of us have said the names of our shows yet.
I snuck mine in. I got it in there. I think I did it.
I never said black. No, but I am curious because you are somebody who has
10 times fast.
Who really has moved into different types of comedy and drama. Why was this? What was it about this show, Divorce, and the stories that you were going to be able to tell that made you say, this is what I want to do next?
Well, I was so excited to work with Sarah Jessica Parker, number one. And then secondly, I think that, you know, so many people struggle in marriage. It's really hard, and you can feel really alone in that. Really alone. My character is a character who has a volatile marriage, a roller coaster marriage. And I have so many women coming out to me like, I relate to your character, like they really related to it. I felt like, this is so great. You know, women need to see themselves represented on screen, and I just felt like it was really real. I mean, look, over 55% of marriages don't work. You try to heal these old parts of your childhood through marriage, and most of the time it doesn't work. It's really hard.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, Diane. This is Jackie Giannopoulos.
I've heard so much about you.
Have you? That's so interesting, because I've heard nothing about you. I didn't even, honey, you didn't tell me that Robert was gonna be our dinner guest tonight, or that he was bringing the Jackie.
I left a message on your cell.
Oh, for God's sakes, I haven't listened to that thing in 2 years. I don't come from a traditional home. I was raised by a man. My mom died when I was little, so I don't have any kind of ideas about how life should be for women and children and families. I'm the most open person. And so traditional marriage is like an odd kind of foreign thing to me that I really don't know that much about, even though I'm in one.
I was going to say, you and Chris are such an amazing example of making it work.
There's a great Nora Ephron quote where she says, how could I know what's going on in anyone else's marriage when I don't even know what's going on in my own?
That's a good tag. What is your personal favorite show or performance of the 2017-2018 season?
Oh my God,
what?
That's hard.
This is not a lightning round type of question.
This is like, give me half an hour.
I'm gonna mispronounce her name. Is it Yvonne
Orji?
Orji in Insecure,
I believe.
Is maybe my favorite character on television right now. And I think she's so
Can we have
fantastic. I love their relationship. I love their friendship. I love how the show focuses on it. And I feel like it's a character I haven't seen much before, where she appears to be so together in every way. And yet she can't quite get the piece of her life together that she desires the most. She wants to be in a relationship, and she can't quite figure it out. But on the surface, she maybe has her life, and not in a joking way, genuinely. She has an amazing job. She has great friends, and seems like she should have the perfect life. And I just have loved watching her.
Anyone else have a character, a show, a performance?
I like Heidi Klum in Project Runway because I love Project Runway, and she's so pretty.
She's on Project Runway anymore.
Yeah, she is the real.
Yeah, she is.
Not the all-star.
Okay, I'm like,
I was like, don't do that.
so much. Sorry.
I love like
Bravo.
just watching Project Runway. They're not bitchy. It's not housewives. It's not anger. People are making cool things, and then they judge them. And that is exactly all I want when I'm like, my kids have gone to bed and I've done everything I need to do. I'm like, Project Runway. Heidi Klum.
What about the rest of you?
Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah, the opposite of that.
The opposite of that. Handmaid's Tale.
What about the rest of you guys?
I'm a diehard Atlanta and Baskets fan. So Louis Anderson, and I love Paperboy. Brian, I think his performance is extraordinary.
Atlanta.
It's so unbelievable.
Good.
What about you guys?
Well, just because she said Atlanta, and I was going to say Donald Glover as Teddy Perkins has been haunting me. Literal nightmares. And this is like a person I know. So like to have him transform into that character. I mean, we all know him, but you know.
No, that was
it
really.
was like, it took me a couple scenes even just to be like, is that?
I knew in the first moment, and then I got lost. I have like 3. I would say Atlanta, but from the Donald perspective and hero of the show, the way they are telling story, and the fact that each episode is not linear and you literally almost don't know what show you're in.
It's like a different genre.
Is unbelievable. The way they're telling story is really interesting to me. Wendy Rhodes on Billions. The fact that a female is in the power position in every scene that she's in kind of blows my mind. And then Phoebe Waller-Bridge in Fleabag, to see a woman be so flawed and so mean and so human, and the lead is...
And the creator.
And the creator, all of it.
Molly, do you have one?
Dateline.
Rachel Maddow?
I can't get enough. I like, why do women in particular love murder?
Rachel started we're talking about you were a wrestler, obviously there's glow. So if you had to come up with your wrestling persona, it would be...
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, God.
You want to start with me because I'm supposed to have an answer for this ready to go.
What's a...
Yeah, what? Well, like
a stripper
my
name?
wrestling,
You get asked this a lot.
It's not like a stripper name, although I do find that, you know, there used to be the way to...
Your street
find
and
your
your
middle name.
Yeah.
Or I thought it was your street and your first pet.
Oh, yeah.
But
Lady
the
Joy.
one
is more dominant.
Yeah, I
That
feel
would
like
be
my...
me.
Lady Joy?
I would be Lady Joy. It's just my pet.
That's really good.
That is a great wrestling character. A super positive. We can do that. Lady Joy. Good. Lay the happiness on you. I'm gonna put my hands on Joy.
That would be a great superhero power. It's just like, while I've got my golden lasso on you, you will be happy and kind and nice.
Does anyone else have one?
My brother and I got into a fight recently, and he goes, Frankie, you and your articles. That's Boston for articles. You and your articles. So I don't know if there's something in there.
You'd be like
Article Jones?
There we go.
Article Jones.
Yes. Article Jones, I'm gonna write you to death. I love that.
The truth.
What's your truth? What is the? What is it? Your
Sissy Waterford.
Oh, I love her.
Oh, she sounds like
I want to date with Sissy
my first street.
Mine's pretty good too. Mine's Lacey Arlington.
Oh, that's
Lacey
good.
was around.
She's like leather and lace. She's a little...
Mine would be Gertie Poinsettia. I don't think
anyone... Gertie.
Gertie Poinsettia. She sounds like she's retired.
Gertie Poinsettia. Yeah, she's definitely older.
Yeah,
she's a little older.
She's older.
And undesirable.
But maybe she dresses like an infant.
Oh, there comes the wrestling part of it.
Is that the
Gertie maybe wears a diaper.
What's your pet and street?
First pet and your street you grew up on.
Winchell.
Hannibal Winchell.
She eats people.
Serial killer.
Serial killer.
Biting.
Mine
A
would
lot
be
of biting.
Kitty Winthrop.
Winthrop.
That's just a good character name in your next project.
On this note, we're ending. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Frankie Shaw.
Hi, I'm Molly Shannon. I'm Debra Messing.
Thanks for watching The Hollywood Reporter.
The Hollywood Reporter.
The Hollywood Reporter on YouTube.